This week on Extracts, weird plant pacifications, gross mushrooms hallucinations, pour us another of McCoy's libations.
It's the I was drugged episode.
Welcome to Extracts, a podcast where we introduce each other to our fandoms one episode at a time. I'm your host, Erin Cline, an X-Files enthusiastic apologist.
You changed it.
I sure did.
I did not.
You've had yours the same the whole time. I've changed mine a couple of times. I don't feel like Spooky Bitch represents me correctly anymore, so I feel like enthusiastic apologist at this point. Let's just call a spade here.
And I'm your other host, Stella Cheeks, a slut, a forever slut for Star Trek, this original series. Each podcast, we pick 2 episodes that fit a cinematic theme, watch them together, and then record our feelings.
Our theme this week is, I was drugged!
For our Star Trek episode, I picked the Season 1 classic, This Side of Paradise, a.k.a. the one that our horny foremother saw and went, what if the pollen made you want to fuck about it? It's such a good episode with a plot that makes sense, the triumvirate looking fine as hell, and Leonard Nimoy getting to show off his acting chops.
And for the X-Files, I picked Season 6's Field Trip. You know, the one where Mulder and Scully investigate some hikers' deaths. Or do they?
Big and ominous. Are you ready for digging in there, Mr. Spock?
I am.
I am. Let's dig into Spock's feelings.
It took these people a year to make the trip from Earth. They came all that way and died.
Hardly that, sir. Welcome to Omicron's 83.
Are you ready for a quick-ish episode summary?
Let's go.
This has not been proofread. The Enterprise has been ordered to check in on Federation colony Omicron Ceti 3. It is believed that the entire colony has perished due to the bombardment and Berthold raids, which I don't know if that's real, but it seems fake, right? Is it real? Berthold raids. It doesn't matter. Kirk is preparing himself and his crew for a sad mission and assembles an away team to check on the colony. They don't wear any sort of radiation suit or anything because conveniently a little Berthold radiation was okay, just not like a lot of it, okay? I see you, costume department. The 6 officers beam down onto the idyllic planet that looks an awful lot like Earth. I see you, location department, where they find the colonists alive. Dun, dun, dun. The colony leader, Elias Sandoval, welcomes them saying, oopsie, sorry we didn't check in for like 3 years. Our radio broke, and gosh darn it, no one knew how to fix the dang thing. Kirk is like, well, this is all sus. And Bones is like, well, Jim, these folks are alive. And Sulu is like, but are they? And Spock is like, I hate it here. Elias introduces the triumvirate to Layla Kalomi, their backlit botanist who already knows Spock because she was in love with him back on Earth. Spock is shook, literally says 0 words, and Kirk is like, who the fuck? Meanwhile, Sulu and the rest of the crew are wandering around looking for anything strange. They walk right past the giant weird plants that even Mr. Green Thumb Sulu doesn't notice because, everything here is just so idyllic. But hey, where are all the animals? That's weird, right? And you know what else is weird? This place is supposed to be like an agricultural colony, but they only planted enough food to feed the colony and no other plants. Weird again. It's even extra weird because this man here used to not have an appendix, but he has one now. Say it with me. Weird. The crew continues to poke around but can't seem to piece the puzzle together. Spock reluctantly is testing the soil with Layla, who is being extremely not helpful or scientific. Finally, she relents and is all, let me just show you, silly, and takes Spock over to the weird-looking, suspicious as hell plant, and it splooshes spores all over his damn face. And it is painful because he is a child of 2 worlds. And his biology is not the same as yours. Layla is all, oh my God, I shouldn't her like a dumb bitch. And Spock is like, I am not like you, except, I'm happy and in love and kissing with my mouth. Ick. Back in the land, wow, this is long. Back in the land of sane Kirk and Bones. Back in the land of the sane, Kirk and Bones have had enough of these colonists and call Spock to get his take, but he answers the comm with an attitude. Kirk and Bones are naturally very concerned and split up. Kirk to find Spock and Bones to organize the colonists to transport back to the ship. Kirk and Sulu find Spock hanging from a tree and laughing. Ick! He hops out of the tree and shows them to the plants, and sploosh. Sulu is a whammied and Kirk is not? Spock is all, hey, it's like a symbiotic spore relationship, and it's great because now everyone is healthy and protected from the birth rates, and it's all good, man. Do you want a mint julep? That's like a drink, just so you know. Meanwhile, the colonists suspiciously agree to beam back up to the ship, which is extra suspicious since they have been adamant that they are not leaving. But psych, it's a trick because they really just want to bring their plants on board and sploosh all over the crew. And bam, everybody's whammied. Kirk wanders around the Enterprise while his crew actively and happily mutiny. They are all beaming down onto the planet, and Kirk is just left all alone on his ship. He can't call Starfleet because Uhura is great at her job and fucked the comms up so hard that he's just forced to sit with his feelings until he gets whammied again. And this time it works. He starts to pack up his things and leave forever, and is confronted by all of his accomplishments and medals and his deep love of the Enterprise. He loves the Enterprise so damn much that it breaks the effect of the spores on him, and that's it. It's violent emotions that break the spores' hold, which also implies that no one has sex in paradise, but we don't have to talk about that. Kirk convinces Spock back on board to help him pack, but instead slings all manner of horrible insults at Spock, sending him into a violent rage that ultimately breaks the spell. Spock is shell-shocked and looks a little sad, but Kirk asks him for help, and Spock, our Spock, loves his captain and his ship too. The duo make a plan to incite anger in the colonists to break them out of their spore spell, and it works. Lots of brawling occurs, delightfully including one country doctor, and Spock breaks up with Layla, whose tears break her free of the spores. Everyone agrees that the spores are bad and this place is bad, and they get out of there toot sweet. Something about ambition and humanity, LOL to whatever moral they wanted to shoehorn in here. Sometimes you just gotta walk out of paradise and into the arms of your first officer. Happiness be damned. Am I right, ladies? Look, this episode is good, and actually writing the summaries for good episodes is a lot harder than the bad ones.
I know. That's why my Hell Money one was so long.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to include every single thing about this episode.
Yeah. That was quite the summary from me. What did you think of this episode?
I fucking loved this
so
episode.
good.
I loved this episode.
Finally a good Trek episode.
Oh my god, it was so good. I really liked it. I loved that it was beautifully shot.
It's pretty.
All of the long range shots were so effective, because they're so different visually from what you've seen on the ship and with the other a lot of the other episodes. And so I really loved the long shots and all of the very technicolor parts of it. I really liked that. I really liked the immediate close-up shots. I thought they were very effective of both the whammy and also Kirk being what the fuck is going on.
Shatner does some excellent reaction acting.
Yes, I also had that in here that I love all of the fucking acting. I thought everyone had a really great opportunity to show an elevated level of acting by being both themselves as their regular characters and then these spore-infested versions of them. All of them did a great job of 1, 2. They were very different. And I fucking loved the rotating cameras of Kirk on the ship, the realization of being alone on there and how that's impacting him. Those were so well shot that that's such a big part of why this episode is good. And so it was awesome to get to watch that. I could not take notes fast enough because I just wanted to watch it. This is an episode that I would watch over and over again. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, this is definitely my top 10. It might be in my top 5. I love this episode.
It's really fucking good. And I fucking hated the Spock stuff. And you're supposed to. And it worked so well. And I was just cringing in on myself on how much I fucking hated it.
I know. I could feel you because you were in the beginning, you were having a really bad reaction. And me, Bobby, were just wait, it makes sense. You're supposed to feel this way.
Ugh, I just hated it. But I liked that. I know we've already seen an episode from earlier in the season where he smiles weirdly and where he's near another plant. And so I like that they used that more effectively in this one where you are more aware of what his character is and very child of two worlds, non-emotional, et cetera, whatever. But they did a great job of juxtaposing those against each other. And so, like, once you start to see him climbing the tree, and Kirk's like, what the fuck is happening?
Spock?
Yeah, like, you guys were right that it gets to that, but, like, sitting through that at the beginning was like, I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
I feel like on a rewatch, I would like it better.
Yeah.
I would appreciate it more because it's not like,
Even though this is season 1, this is near the tail end of season 1. So they've definitely sat in these characters longer. They are starting to really like get into them. And so all of your reactions are definitely reactions other people would have had because they're like, you saw the girl, the backlit botanist, and you immediately thought it was going to be Kirk, right?
Yes.
You went, oh no. And then it was like, Spock?
yeah, yes, it was
Like, that's a good play.
And, like, the close-ups of it are so true to how it is so many times with Kirk, too. And I like that they played with that and that the characters feel so much more defined. Like,
Yeah.
I just really liked it.
Yeah, and I just appreciate, too, how much Leonard Nimoy specifically got to explore the characterization of Spock. He is so good in this episode. It's very nuanced. I really love the writing of how he fights back against the spores. And also when the spores are broken, you can tell that he, is having conflicted feelings about it, but he very quickly just like reverts back to this is my like safety space, is like being Spock, the first officer. But also I love that thing that he says to Layla when her spores are broke and she's kind of upset because she's loved him for a long time or whatever and finally got to have this happiness. And she's like really upset. And he has that moment where you can tell that he's kind of upset too. But then he says, this is who I am. I can't apologize. I don't remember verbatim, but like it's basically him being like, I'm sorry that it took literally like a spore like plant monster to get me to where you want me to be, but that's not where I am. And like she kept always being like, he never meets me where I want or whatever. Like it's a one-sided love. I do like that she's pretty self-aware of that even under the whammy, but she never tried to meet him where he is at. And I think that is also a really good exploration of his character throughout all of Star Trek. Like so many people want him to meet them at their humanity, but nobody, honestly, until Captain Kirk really like meets him where he is as a Vulcan, which I think is like good foreshadowing and also just like deep good character work.
That's one of the other things I like put as my bullet points for this is that the script is excellent. Like
DC Fontana, baby.
There's so many like great lines. Like they have so many great interactions with each other. Like it was just such great script writing. And like I've seen enough Trek at this point to know that there is some very bad script writing. And like this was I'm so glad we opened season 4 with this. This was such a delightful episode to watch. Like I feel like every part of it worked well together.
Yeah, it's very interesting too, talking about the writing, because this was written by DC Fontana, but it was originally written by Jerry Soule. We've maybe talked about him before. I don't really know, but it was supposed to be like Sulu in the Spock role, and Sulu was also supposed to have a disease a la McCoy in All Is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. But because that's part of the reason the like plant, the immediate cure of it, right? So that's why that was in there. But something wasn't like really working with the draft or whatever. And Roddenberry, this is DC Fontana's first big one.
Yeah, I'll get into that later, but this is basically the story by rewrite that got DC the job on staff.
Yeah, so, he gives it to her, and she who has always had a pretty deep understanding of Spock, we've talked about it before, is the one that was like, nah, it's got to be Spock, and we have to play with that. And, like, I think I also read somewhere that Leonard Nimoy was like, at first, like, really? Are you sure? And then after filming it, he was like, I was really grateful for that opportunity. It's one of those episodes that a lot of people who worked on Trek specifically were like DC Fontana was like, I love this episode. Ralph Sinitzky, who is the director, he really loved it. Nimoy loved it. Like, it's one that's beloved by the cast, but then is also beloved by basically everyone. Like, if you, go to the, like, reception part of, like, Wikipedia, it's, like, A from Zach Hanlon, like, top 10 from Sci-Fi, top 50 of all of Star Trek, or 24 out of all of Star Trek. That's 700 plus episodes at the time that they did that. They're like, this is, like, so solid. Like, Denim Geek, good. Nerdist, good. Like, it's one of the ones where it's just like, no, this is really good. This is a good encapsulation of what all these characters are. It's a plot that even though it's like ha 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 spores or whatever, it actually does make sense, right? Like they answer all of the questions. We know why it works.
Also, it was the 60s, so it's not like that was a TV trope yet. Like this contributes to that being a TV trope at some point.
Exactly. And it's also like, you know, it's the 60s, so they're talking about psychedelics and like drugs and stuff. So that's also very of the time. I do think it's very funny though. Jerry Soule, he hated the rewrites so much that he wanted a pseudonym. So he was credited as Nathan Butler because he was not happy with the rewrites.
Well, he was wrong.
He was fundamentally wrong.
Right.
So, yeah, I just thought that was really interesting when you talk about how good the writing is. Like, that's our girl. That's our girl.
Man, coming in clutch. It was just so good.
Yeah. Can we talk about the bones of it all?
Bro. Oh, my God.
Even if you hated every other part of this episode, the fact that Bones gets whammied and immediately his accent gets thick, which you can tell, like, you know, he's from Georgia. Also, DeForest Kelley's from Georgia. So, you know, DeForest Kelley as an actor has to kind of get rid of his accent. Bones, like, kind of, like, assimilates and doesn't really have the accent. But when he relaxes, it just...
I loved it so much. I loved the deepening of the accent. I loved that he was like, I'm so ready to drink a mint julep. All I want in my fucking paradise is a mint julep. I want to put a little gray blanket around a tree and sit with I don't even want to drink it. I just want it to be in my hand. Like, I fucking loved it. I thought it was so good.
I also really particularly like Bones and Kirk's relationship pre-getting whammied. There's a lot of really good Bones and Kirk stuff in here, like him like giving him the medical report without even wanting it, or like their little exchange about Spock, or them like constantly checking in with each other and backing each other up. Like, it's a good like captain, head medical officer, like just great.
Again, because there's so much more characterized. It's so much more like obvious that that's like the relationship that they have too. I just really loved it. I have a question about fandom. Okay, so there is a point where McCoy says to Jim very casually, that time I broke 2 ribs. Like, is that a thing that people like really?
Yeah, I didn't really look it up that much. I haven't really totally clocked that. People might put it in stuff here and there. But when I was watching it and taking my notes, I was like, ooh, what is the story of the rib?
Yeah, because he says it so casually to him. Like, oh, well, he must either know about it or was there. And it made me think of when we were talking about the relationship between Kirk and McCoy in the J.J. Abrams universe, the AOC, right? Is that what it's called? No?
AOS.
AOS. I like that we talked before about how that bond is so immediately clear in that one, and that felt like this felt like that too as he said that. Like, we have this bond that we don't need to discuss. It's just like this. And like that immediately clicked. I'm so surprised there's not more of that. This will be why I start writing fan fiction.
I do really deeply... I made a joke about it in the summary, but I do actually really deeply appreciate the fight scene between McCoy and Sandoval, because McCoy is so quick and takes him out so good. And like the idea that, like, you know, we talk about all the time, LOL, post-capitalist, blah, blah, blah. But this is a military organization that like couches itself in exploration. And like, of course he would have to take hand-to-hand combat, even as like a medic or whatever. And the fact that he's usually surrounded by Kirk and Spock and these people who are better at fighting, so he never really has to. But like when shit hits a fan, he was like, oh, I can put you in a fucking hospital real quick.
That was awesome. That was so awesome. I love the idea that someone was like, we don't need you here because you're a doctor and like your skill is useless here. And he was like, I'll see you in fucking hell.
I have earned my rest.
Did you not hear me say I'm just a country doctor? Motherfucker. Like, I loved that. It was such good Bones characterization. Ugh, this episode was so good.
I love it. I love this episode. I just also love the, like, you know, people want to shit on Shatner all the time for being this overactor. This is an excellent acted episode. His reaction shots specifically, but even the one scene where like he is breaking the spore spell, like if you took that out of context, people would be like, ugh, Shatner overacting. But like we say all the time, a lot of the instances when people say it's overacting, he's body swapped, whammied.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's actively has some kind of mind altering thing. And I just really appreciated all of the acting in this.
I totally agree. Again, I feel like everybody had space to do it well, too. Like, I'm specifically thinking of Uhura, and where, like, they show her at the beginning is very competent, and, like, I don't understand why their communications aren't working this way. I'll keep doing this. And then to see her, like, sabotage and immediately walk away, like, oh, we don't need this. We're just here.
Sabotage it so thoroughly that the captain of the ship, who used to work in like engineering, can't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. I liked, I'm sure it's because they weren't available for filming or whatever, but I really liked that they didn't show Scotty or Chapel being like whammied. So but until he said the ship was emptied, it was like, there's this possibility that they're still here. And then when he specifically called to Scotty, it was like, everybody's fucking gone.
Yeah.
If Scotty's gone, everybody's fucking gone. And like, I really liked that too. Even without them being there, you got this great characterization of them.
Yeah. Kirk could like feel that he was alone.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the quiet of the ship. Like, so good. It was so good.
Woo, I love it so much. It's so good. I don't, so let's get into some fan lore, blah, blah. We talked a little bit about the writing. I'm just going to rip this Band-Aid off. This is one of two instances that is the birth of the sex pollen trope in like fandom. Like it absolutely, it just is, because, you know, our horny foremothers saw this and said, what if this was fuck or die though, actually? It's this, and then the same time, I think it was 63. I don't know. It's also in the 60s when Poison Ivy debuts, and Poison Ivy uses for like spores or whatever. They never call it sex pollen in the comics, obviously. It's just like pheromones and whatever. And it works. It makes people want to kiss her, it makes people want to fuck, whatever. But then the actual term sex pollen was used in like a DC fanfic. And like the 1-2 punch in the 60s of here's poison ivy, here are these like spores. And specifically, I think because it got hit, Spock got hit so hard and it was a Spock-centric episode, watching the spores fundamentally change him too. That just became an incredible fanfic trope. I have tons of sex pollen fics. They're so good. There's literally one of my my go-to like horny comfort read is a Kirk Spock like sex pollen fic because it's so good. I want to share with everybody. Everybody should read it. And it's short. It's so good. It's so good. But it's just like just like Ponfar, but Ponfar gets into the, you know, Vulcan biology or whatever, or like Alpha, Beta, Omega, but that gets into, you know, all of that. So this is like a cleaner way to get the fuck or die without, you know, Vulcan ideology, or I'm not going to say it out loud. Never mind. I was going to say some gross ABO stuff. That's a different podcast. The people who know heard me say it. they get it.
Great. That's fine.
The title is like taken from the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, This Side of Paradise. It's supposed to be kind of like a interpretation of like the Lotus Eaters from like Homer, you know, like go the diversion and it's so great and it totally takes you off your path and your ambition or whatever. And, you know, I think those both work really well, especially considering, again, the 60s having, you know, society looking at people being like, these kids on their drugs, they got no ambition, these hippies or whatever. So like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's an interesting like historical time capsule.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I thought this was great. So originally the way that the spores were supposed to be dispelled, it was supposed to be the introduction of alcohol. And so it was like, you know, Kirk's whammied and then he's like, I'll just have one sip of alcohol on my way out, I guess. And then it clears him. But the thing that I thought was the best, instead of inciting Spock to fight, he was going to beam Spock up and then just shove a bottle in his mouth. Force feed Spock alcohol.
That's some fanfic shit.
Which also is interesting because technically Vulcans can't get drunk on alcohol.
I was going to say, don't they have like a weird relationship with alcohol? Okay.
But like on episode 24 of season 1, they probably wouldn't know that, you know? But I just think that would have changed whatever. I thought that was really funny. Just the image of Kirk just like jumping on him and being like, drink some alcohol. It obviously probably more would have been like, let's have a toast or something, and here's some water. Psych, it's fucking gin.
Scotty would never leave the ship then.
Yeah. Scotty would be like, just me and you, Kirk, till the end. In the original script, Kirk was supposed to come across Spock and Layla kissing, but then the director was like, look at that tree. Do you think you could climb up in that tree? So then it turned into Spock hanging like a ding dong out of a tree, which is absurd. And we already watched them kiss, so we don't need to watch them kiss. Like I liked that a lot. It was so silly.
When he got down out of the tree, I was like, man, Leonard Nimoy is fucking strong.
Yeah, the way he lowers himself down.
Yeah, it's so, like, it looks so smooth, and it's like, bro, you are very strong.
He's also in that tree for a long time, and it's, like, pretty high. He had to pull himself up there, one presumes.
Mm-hmm.
We've also in the past talked about kind of the feline tendencies of Vulcans.
That's
in
true.
general.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me just climb up into this tree.
I feel so joyous.
I'm sure you might remember this. I don't know, because you have watched Star Trek 2009. But there is a very interesting parallel between Kirk yelling at Spock to get him angry in this one and that happening in Star Trek 2009, which sometimes they take stuff and I don't like it, but some of the writers had some nods. So I did like that, because there's the whole scene where, like, Kirk is like, your mother died for nothing. And then Spock's like, I'm going to choke the life out of you.
I do kind of remember that.
Yeah. So it's an effective way to fuck with Spock is to talk about his mommy.
Yeah. It felt like that in that moment, too.
Yeah.
Like, you knew that he was like, I'm really crossing these fucking lines.
I know. And I love the reaction shot of Kirk being like, are we good? I'm sorry. And I like that he's like, yeah, at least you got to punch me about it, right? This sucked for
that.
me physically and emotionally.
I wrote down the line, you get to belt his captain several times.
Yeah.
That was, like, very sexually charged. Like, here, you get to do it several times. Okay.
I also love the thing where, like, Spock's broken of the spell and he's trying to regulate himself after that, the spores or whatever. And he has that moment where he's like, I hate you. You should put me in the brig. And Kirk is just like, it's okay. I said a lot of fucked up stuff. What if we just work together and everything's okay? I immediately forgive you. And Spock's like, yes, correct. Logical.
I love that both of these episodes, this and the X-Files one, are, like, they're all whammied, but it's really them, like, my paradise is to work together to be right with you.
Yeah.
Like, they both experience being right individually for both of them, where right for Spock is obviously that he's whammied, but, like, I love that what brings both of these pairs together is that their paradise is working together. Yeah. I love that.
And I do love, too, when he's, like, breaking up with Layla or whatever, and he says, I have a duty to the ship, and I have a duty to that man.
Yes.
Like, yes, you do. You can't whammy me when the Enterprise is here.
Right? He's just hugging the board.
Yeah.
No. I love that moment where he just, like, slammed his hand on the board, like, no, I love this ship too much.
I'll be goddamned if you take this ship away from me. Yeah.
Also, we haven't even mentioned everyone looked hot in this episode.
Everyone is so hot.
Oh my god.
Kirk is, like, really looking good, and Nimoy looks great. Also, can we talk about how well manicured Nimoy's hands are?
You did several times while we were watching it.
He's just like and then Bones looks like dirty, but also hot.
That's
and
what
Sulu
I said.
looks
like,
good.
Why is his neck all dirty? Whatever. Who cares?
Uhura looks gorgeous.
Oh my god.
Layla is really beautiful.
Yes.
Everyone's fucking hot.
Yes.
Pre-spores and post-spores. Everybody's looking fine.
They were like, this is perfect. Everybody's in paradise. Y'all gotta get it together.
It's all that natural lighting.
And the wind always blowing in the right direction.
Also, the music, they use the music really well on this. The like discordant kind of creepy music, the really like lovely, like romantic music, but it's also like still kind of ominous.
Yes. It was so, again, like every part of this episode just fits so well together. Kirk had a line at one point. It was it's like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle that's all the same color. You don't know where to start. And like this was a great jigsaw puzzle that all fit together at the end. It was just so well executed.
They answer all the questions, like the plot works, the character stuff works. This is just like, it's just such a good episode.
Absolutely, 100%.
And it has like broad fandom like repercussions. Ugh.
Yeah. Yep.
You couldn't want more. Written by a woman. I love it.
I love it.
I love Star Trek. You have anything else to say about it?
No, I do not.
All right, let's do synopsis showdown.
All right.
It takes a whole ass symbiotic plant to make Spock straight. But joke's on you, weird plant. No one takes Kirk's Spock or Kirk's ship away from him.
Paradise is a lie, and only Kirk's love of the ship can save you.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
All right, yeah, there you go. All right, are you ready for Scully? It's me.
I am.
Well, I'd say it looks like a double murder, possibly one with ritualistic overtones.
Season 4 goal, shorter summaries.
Not me.
More legible summaries. That's a better way to whatever. Okay, anyway. All right. This is the episode where Mulder and Scully accidentally do mushrooms, as opposed to when Mulder does it on purpose in a hospital in season 10, which we will get to. Do not worry about that. While investigating the mysterious deaths and straight up stripping to the bone within like literal days of bodies of 2 young hikers. Spooky body shit you can put your face way too close to and almost kill yourself, and others, you know, Mulder is there. Here's the thing about this episode. The structure of this episode plays really heavily on the knowledge that the viewer has and when they have it. So instead of trying to walk you through the intricacies of a series of hallucinations, I'm going to give you this like small breakdown. You may recognize this structure from another previously covered episode. We'll get to that also. Okay, so the hallucinations go in this order. The hikers, whose deaths we will shortly see. Mulder, whose face is drawn to literally whatever the answer is, but like in a derogatory way. Scully, whose hallucination is that science will save us. And a double joint hallucination where you trust no one and you shoot them in the fucking chest. And then, of course, the day is saved by literally the only fucking person who gives a shit about these ding-dongs, assistant director Walter Skinner. And oh my god, also they hold hands while they're all burned up. It's so wonderful. And it's like another season before they fuck. The end.
What if we held hands in the ambulance? JK, unless? That's what I wrote in my notes.
What did you think of this episode?
This episode was really good. It's another one of those episodes that's just very clever and shot in a very clever way and plays on your knowledge of what the X-Files are, what the characters are, and also forces the actors to be like very in touch with who the core of their characters are, which is like a good parallel between the two of them. Is like, who are these people at the core and why is it impossible to put them in a paradise?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I like that it plays with the idea of paradise without like specifically mentioning it.
Yeah. Because like we have the beginning of the episode where Mulder and Scully are like, you always want me to do science about it and you always want me to believe in aliens about it. And they're like kind of bickering and like pissed at each other. And Mulder is even like, I'm always right, though, and you're not right. Why can't you ever even just give me the benefit of the doubt? And she's literally, like, speechless about this. She's like, ooh. So they have this, like, bickering moment. So then they both go into their, like, fantasies or whatever, where they get, you know, it was a simple answer, and it was aliens, and both of them are like, this is suspicious.
Yes, I you're right, because it plays with the character. Like, I love that the other person is like, why are you agreeing with me? Yeah. Why aren't you saying that you're admitting that you're wrong, and that's so uncharacteristic of you.
So
like
not like you.
And I feel like the beginning kind of establishes that too, that they're so annoyed at each other because they know each other so well. And it's like, I know you're gonna say it's fucking aliens. Can't you just be normal? And he's like, bitch, I'm always motherfucking right. And she's like, wait a minute, what? Yeah. Like, that plays so well on it, so that later when you see them, like, wait a fucking minute, what is this all about? Like, it just works so well in this episode.
Yeah, and I love the end where they're like the dream within a dream, where Skinner is like, you've never agreed on a report, and Mulder's like, yeah, we never have. How do we get here? This is bullshit.
Do you remember how you got here? I don't remember how I got here either.
Let's shoot him about it. All that yellow goo. Gross yellow goo.
Ick.
I do like, this is, you know, a good instance too of like the coroner or like a ancillary, like not FBI person being good at their job. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he didn't see the goo and he was like, must be swamp. And she looked weird and he was like, yeah, I guess I should run it. Immediately goes, runs it. And it's like, hey, this is plant digestive enzymes. And, oh, also that reminds me of these other files. And, you know, we can assume that he kind of starts to put it together and then is like, where's my truck? My truck's still not here. Oh, those two fucks are definitely missing. Mm-hmm. And then like call Skinner, right? Like, yeah. So Skinner, yeah, does come to save the day, but I think it's like pretty much the coroner who saves them.
Yeah, and you know, it's true. In Scully's hallucination, like part of what starts to break her is that he is being weird. Yeah. And like, wait a minute, you already kind of combated me on this, but then you ran the things and like this was collaborative and now you're saying the exact same thing that I said earlier. Like, that's
it's
a good observation.
Ritualistic killing. And especially to the lone gunman being like, yeah, we're gonna get the guy, and she's like, no, you guys are supposed to be weird.
Yes.
You're being so not weird about this. Mulder would want you to be weird. This is not right.
I love it. I also like too that's when they start to join their hallucination, that they both meet in his apartment, and that's the place where they're like safe together, and they're both like, wait, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And like they break out of it in that sense, but then that's what they do later too. It's like, wait a minute, how the fuck would we just wake up from this goo? And I like that what we get is a visual of they can't.
Yeah.
They're sort of
really trying, and their like eyes are fluttering, and they're really trying, but they can't.
Yeah, and like part of the reason they're able to do that is because they're so strongly bonded. Like,
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah, I do love that line too of like, name a drug that wears away when you realize you're drugged.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh yeah, none. 0. It's not how it works.
It's ultimately they both like do good detective work. It's just that they're underground covered in slime. Okay. So, some things about this episode. Fox promoted it with the tagline, "It seduces your mind and feeds off your flesh. Tonight, Mulder and Scully stumble onto a plant with a taste for human flesh." Also, Dane...
You can't use the word flesh in the same sentence.
I thought the same thing. I was like, this doesn't work.
One sentence.
This is
I would
not the
never.
same. No, right? I was like, ugh, our bumpers are so much better than this. This is bullshit. It's like when people like try to rhyme it in a song, and it's like, that's the same word. You can't be doing that. Whatever. Frank Sponsnitz he directed this episode,
Yep.
right? Directed? Am I correct about that? I'm pretty sure. know
I
that
saw
he
his
wrote it.
name.
Yeah, I can't remember if he wrote it or also directed it.
This was written by him, but directed by Kim Let's Kick It in the Ass Manners.
Oh, okay. Yes, I see that. Thank you. So Frank described the writing process of this as an experience, because sort of like the episode that we watched for Star Trek, it went through a lot of changes. Like originally, you may have been able to tell that it was originally Mulder goes into a cave and gets stuck in there, and like, yeah, for sure. And part
He does like to go into caves.
And as they like punched up the script, they were like, okay, we need a moment where Mulder points out he's always fucking right. And they were like, we really wanted to have Scully affirming it, but in the end they didn't. I mean, sort of, they did, but they didn't. And like having her sit in silence kind of affirms it. And like, I like that they focused on that as like, we need to do this. This episode was written specifically to let the audience see their two hallucinations, obviously. And part of what they were doing with the episode, and also that the audience noticed later, is that this is basically a more serious Bad Blood. Like, it's got the same structure.
I was going to say that. It's got the feeling of like my memory, your memory.
Exactly, yeah. And so I like that they did that on purpose. Like, I was talking about the series of hallucinations earlier because it's like almost exactly the same, but it works in this way and it doesn't feel repetitive. In order to prepare for the episode, the crew, again, loved working on this. Another parallel, like really loved the group project of doing a bunch of research about mushrooms and fungi and human decomposition and cave geology. Like, they really went fucking all in on this, and I love that. And you can tell too. It's like everybody put their full effort in, just like the Star Trek episode.
It also makes sense too. Like, we establish it's mushrooms, we establish it's fungi, and then when they start sharing their hallucination, and then also the two hikers in the beginning are sharing an hallucination, like that makes sense. That's how a mycelial network works. So it like makes sense. The deeper they're into the goo, the more connected their brains get while they're dying.
Schreiben and Gilligan obviously did punch-ups for this script, and Spotnitz like specifically pointed out that he liked that they did the foreshadowing with the mushrooms, that like the stepping on it and the spores, and like we noticed it obviously because we were looking for it, but like you didn't notice it at first, and then so you get these like multiple opportunities where it builds up, and it's like, oh fuck it. And again, it's like it plays really heavily on the knowledge that the viewer has and when they have it, as opposed to when Mulder and Scully have it, and like that's a good part of that too.
I did guess a lot of it though.
Yes, well, you're very good at guessing mysteries. We've talked about that before. Like, you're very good at guessing that kind of stuff.
Well, also, like, I watch a lot of this type of genre. I read a lot of this type of genre. Also, again, there are a lot of parallels in some of the supernatural stuff because some of the X-Files people are supernatural people. Right. So it is interesting, too, like this basic, like an organism lulling its victim into complacency so it can digest it is used in both Supernatural and X-Files. But like this one's like a plant. Like plants are neither good nor bad. They're just nature, right? And then, but in Supernatural, it's more of like this is a monster who does this. But it is also different. It's cool to see like the same, like sex pollen, right? Like it's cool to see something being put into different plots, I guess.
Yeah, there are so many things about these two episodes that we could have done thematically. Like,
It's
they
wild
line
that
up-
we chose They Were Drugged, and it's both plant drugs.
Yes, absolutely. Like,
Didn't know that. Didn't plan it.
And, like, there are other I Was Drugged episodes of The X-Files. Like, there's one, I don't even know if we're going to get to this, can't remember, but there's one where Mulder does a bunch of ketamine. And, like, I could have picked that one, but, like, I love this episode and wanted to make sure that you saw it, too. Your hair looks incredible right now.
Just kept touching it. I was like, it's got to go into, like, a weird bun on top of my head.
It looks great. Yeah, I like that these, like, line up so well. It's funny, like, we're constrained by how many Star Trek episodes we have left, and yet we still find ways that these series really fit
Work
together.
Yeah, and we even have that line where Kirk is insulting fucking Spock, and he's just saying a bunch of weird insults, and one of them is like, you should be squatting on a mushroom, which I don't know what that means. That's an insane thing. But the fact that in that episode where there's no mushrooms, they say mushrooms, and then the other one was a mushrooms episode, I was like, this is a stretch, but I am using it.
Yeah, absolutely. If that was a theme from season 2 where we were like, we're stretching this shit as thin as it could possibly get, then that would have worked.
I just love that he called the Vulcan race elves with hyperactive thyroids. Like, what the fuck? That doesn't even make any sense because elves historically or whatever are also very, like, lithe and whatever. Stupid.
I love that he used your
He's so
child
bad
of
at-
two worlds against him. Like, it was so effective.
I love Captain Kirk's bad at insults.
It's true.
It's so good.
Well, clearly he was good at that one because he's so connected to Spock that he was like, I know exactly
He's
what to do, you
I know
motherfucker.
exactly what to say.
Exactly.
And it's gonna hurt.
Absolutely.
Please don't kill me. I also love that he's prepared with, like, something that he's like, I'm something to block that Spock immediately.
Like, dense in fucking half. Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, that
They know each other so
they
well.
know each other so well. That scene too is, like, full of hilarious, like, oh, well, that's a stunt person, that's a stunt person, that's a stunt person. But because of the constraints of how small the transporter room is, like, you can't do a wider shot.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, we know it's not William Shatner. It's fine.
That's fine. Whatever. I liked to, like, this didn't have fight stuff, but I love the stuff of them coming out of the ground at
Yeah.
the beginning when they're still in the hallucination where they, like, pull themselves out. And in that part of the hallucination, and it happens later too, Mulder is, like, specifically, like, my goal is to make sure Scully's okay.
Yeah.
And, like, I love that. It's so true to his character and, like, a reason that he would believe, absolutely, I wanted to give everything to rescue my partner. Like, and also that means that Scully's fantasy is that Mulder actually does something fucking for her and, like, actually rescues her ass, which I also really like.
I think it's very funny too that they got pulled out of the slime in their dream and they looked perfect. And all I kept harping on was like, they should have bald spots. Their skin should be fucked up. Their clothes should be fucked up. This is bullshit. It digests them in 3 days. This is trash. And then Mulder uses that as an exclusive, like, wait, we don't have any scars. Isn't that weird? I'm like, yes, it is weird, Mulder. Thank you so much. And then when they're actually pulled out, I maintain their clothes should have been more fucked up. But they are, like, splotchy and red and they, like, being digested.
Yeah, I like it. I like that they, in the hallucination, they come together and at the end they're like, we fucking made it. We got out. We tried. We didn't really do it by ourselves, but we got out. Also, I fucking love how many people there are. I love that when they get rescued, it is a fucking search party, which also shows you, like, how weird their hallucination is, that they just came out of the ground. There's nobody there. Nobody's looking for them. And this one, they are freaking the fuck out. Everybody there has the masks on. They're like, we gotta get them the fuck out of the ground because they'll be dead. They'll be digested. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like it's also a good showing of how much Skinner gives a fuck about them and noticed. And when the coroner called him, he was like, get their asses out there. Like, we need to rescue these dumb idiots. Like, I love that. It's a good, like, reestablishment of how much it's season 6. Like, you know how much he cares about them.
Yeah, and he's part of their hallucinations too, and, like, he's like a foil for them, and he's not talking totally out of character, but he's being, like, very gentle and stuff, which is also, like, not how he talks to them, and them being like, this is weird, you're being weird.
He's like their straight man. And both of them recognize, like, what the you're usually way meaner to us because we fucking deserve it.
We're us and you're you.
And like you said, I love that line about you guys have never signed off on the same report. And they were both like, wait a fucking second. It's so effective. Okay, so I have a few facts. There's a whole fucking research section on this, and I'm going to leave most of that to Bobby. So the one thing I really wanted to touch on, so Lee Smith, who was a researcher for the series, consulted with the research at the Body Farm, which is a 30-acre facility operated by
the Body Farm.
Operated by the Department of Anthropology at the University of Tennessee, and I have repeatedly said I want my body dumped there when I'm dead. It's such a cool place. They put bodies out in different ways. Like, I have so many tattoos. I feel like it's such an interesting thing to be able to give my body to, like, decaying science that people don't necessarily know. I just think it's such a cool idea. So I love that they talked to them and were like, what does it look like when a body decomposes? How do we show them half digested? Like, I love that they looked into that and talked to actual professionals about it. It's very X-Files in a lot of ways. So I love that. As you might imagine, it was very popular. It was very well received. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the writing about this episode is the idea of like alternative universes and their existence like within the tangent of this. There's a lot of shit about logic, blah, 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 blah. I barely understand all of the philosophical writing about it, whatever. Who gives a fuck?
Blah, blah.
Anyway, Emily Vanderwerf, who we also talk about or quote from a lot, said this is one of the top 10 episodes of the series, which like I can kind of see. I don't know that I would have necessarily picked it for my top 10, but like it's so well done. Everybody like clearly loved working on it, and you can like really see that. But she specifically pointed out too that this is a specific move from the Syndicate storylines, because we're now in season 6, into the monsters of the week are so much more prominent post like 6 and on, and it's because they're like a purposeful examination of American culture through like the way that they present themselves. We sort of talk about Trek too, like the way that they're presented individually like makes a difference in the way that they're presented in the story. Okay. I have one full quote I wanted to read from Earl Cressy. Mulder and Scully's relationship in this episode goes far beyond love, respect, or friendship and transcends even the touch of their hands, which symbolizes their ultimate union at the end. Their connection is so strong, so powerful, they even share the same narcotic-induced hallucinations. Soulmates indeed. Like, I love it. And
Soulmates indeed.
It really is. It's the whole story is about them, like, we're so strongly bonded as partners that, like, we will survive almost anything together. I just love it. I think it's so wonderful. Okay. Any other thoughts?
No, it was great.
Okay. Let's do synopsis showdown. Turn my pages. Mushrooms show Mulder and Scully that they're in love.
Scully and Mulder get whammied into a too-perfect psychosis where their real desire to keep bickering forever with no resolution is unearthed.
Literally unearthed.
I know. It's a purposeful word choice.
Oh, good job. Oh my God. All right. Are you ready for Deep Throat's mission logs?
I am.
Let's do it.
Hey, Jim boy, y'all ever have a real cold Georgia-style mint julep, huh?
Starting with this side of Paradise, of course, as Stell said, this was first written by Jerry Soule and DC Fontana, but then the teleplay goes to DC Fontana solo. Soule, for all of his missteps for writing this episode initially, does go on to write Whom Gods Destroy and the Corbomite Maneuver. He gets Trek right after getting it wrong for his first try out, eventually. As this script developed, it also went through several different titles, starting with Sandoval's Planet, and then moving on to Power Play, and then moving on to The Way of the Spores. Stell touched on a couple of the main points of Soule's original draft before, both it being a Sulu-centric episode, him having a disease that the spores end up curing, the love interest, all of that. A couple of other things from that did not get transferred over were that, much like in the X-Files episode, the spores here were a communal intelligence that linked everyone's psyche when they were under its influence. They also gave him telekinetic powers, which again...
telepathic powers.
They also give him telepathic powers, which is kind of like an un-Trek thing. Yeah. Again, there's just... It had some cool ideas, but there were some things that didn't fit in it. However, one of the first things that DC changed about the script when it got put in her hands was that all of the spores were supposed to be inside a cave. The logic there was that, well, if all the spores are just inside a cave, why don't we just avoid this cave?
Yeah.
Also, then you would have to figure out your soundstage and stuff for that, or if this, they're like, let's go to Disney Ranch and muck around.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
real.
it would not have looked nearly as beautiful and as natural and green as this show ended up being.
I almost wish that they had shown the green hills before they showed Sulu sitting next to the pink. I mean, I guess that's part of it is they're supposed to notice immediately that it's like obviously super weird. But when you see it out in the fields in like the Disney Technicolor, it doesn't seem that weird.
Yeah.
And like maybe that's why they weren't like, oh well, we'll just clock this.
Yeah, and they go to
immediately.
alien planets with alien plants all the time.
Right, yeah.
So it's just funny us knowing like everything looks regular Earth except for this one
Weird
foam
ass
thing.
lily plant, I guess. Anyway, sorry.
Spores.
So her work on rewriting this script, as said before, was what got DC Fontana the story editor job on Trek. Super cool. From her words, Roddenberry hands her this script and said, if you can rewrite the script, you can be my story editor.
Hell yeah.
Ow.
This is directed by Ralph Sinensky, as Stell said as well. He directs 7 Trek episodes total. He was supposed to direct the episode after this, Devil in the Dark, but production schedules got switched and that put him on this. I think he did a great job. There is that shot after Spock gets shot by the spores where it kind of goes to a shaky cam and follows Spock to the ground. You don't see that a lot in Trek, so you can kind of tell it's Sinensky's first episode, but it's super effective and really, really sells the emotion that Nimoy is putting out in that moment. So yes, of course, we'll talk about these locations that we see. The large open meadow seen in several sequences is Malibu State Park in Southern California. It's also the cornfield where a lot of Planet of the Apes was shot, as well as Gunsmoke. Of course, with those barns and all of that, there's gonna be cowboy shows there. That shit was just standing there. Specifically, the barn that Kelowitz and Sulu investigate can be seen in several episodes of Kung Fu. The buildings seen in the teaser and after the first scene where DeSalle shows McCoy the spores are different locations is the Disney Ranch, as Stell said. They were initially supposed to shoot that in Malibu State Park, but the actress playing Layla got deathly sick one of these days of filming, and so they delayed the rest of her scenes a day to see if she can come back the second day better.
I thought
and
she had measles.
Yeah.
Ooh.
She didn't.
Yikes.
She did not have measles.
But they were like, you gotta go.
Yeah, no, for real. Like that, you don't fuck around with
Yeah.
that.
So they shoot the rest of it in Disney Ranch without her having the measles, which, great shit.
You could tell that they were different shooting days because Bones' makeup wasn't so fucked up in the scenes that she was in.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Star Trek V is a gathering of short stories written by James Blish, of course, that is stories and adaptations of episodes from the series. And in Star Trek V, there is the adaptation for this. In that, there is an exchange between Spock and Layla that's not in the episode where Spock says something like, it's been a long time, and then Layla says something like, the years have seemed twice as long. And then Spock also awkwardly holds her hand while not under the whammy. Things that don't fit because that is sex.
Yeah, right? I was like, why? Why are you holding hands? Stop!
Because they're whammy.
I also saw a couple of interesting conversations on message boards while looking into this. We kind of solve why there's no animals. It's kind of hand waved off that they're all vegetarian, but you kind of get that.
The Bertold Rays killed them.
It's the Bertold Rays.
That's what I assumed, yeah.
But then there was also further discussion about why there are no children present and talked about.
Oh yeah, they say men, women, and children, and then there are no children.
Now we do not see the other camps.
That's true.
There's two
And
other camps.
we also don't see any children. So there were talks that the Bertold Rays kill animals and anyone under the age of like 23, because Bones mentions he doesn't see anyone under 23. So like the story is actually a lot darker once you think about the number of people that went on this expedition.
Also, we don't totally necessarily know if there are other colonies. That could also be just something that they said.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting too because we talked about like being horny and like wanting to have sex is a big emotion, and so like do they even fuck on this planet? And so like that also kind of tracks for me of like they were sent out as like a generational ship on a mission, but like they didn't send any children that time.
Yeah,
like
we also don't see any of their downtime. I just imagine them like being done with their work and then like going and sitting and then just being like, I'm peaceful.
Yeah,
You know?
Yes.
It's creepy if you like really expound on it.
totally.
And then like how far do you take that? Are they all wearing diapers? Do they take care of them? Like,
Well,
they're so
we know
peaceful
that
and
they take
serene.
care. We know
That's
that
true.
they take care of
Well,
themselves.
we know that they're perfectly healthy because of the spores.
Well, and also they plant and they
True,
still eat
yes.
food, and it's all vegetarian food. They work outside. They're all physically fit. Like so, they do take care of themselves. but then, you know, they don't have any ambition or desires, I guess.
Yeah.
Other than wanting to be a part of a collective.
Yeah.
Right. There's a story about a funny blooper from this episode. The line from Spock is that the plants are a repository for thousands of spores. Leonard Nimoy accidentally says suppository for thousands of spores.
Yeah.
And then as the crew laughs, he pops a Tootsie Roll in his mouth.
I guess it could also just be, Kirk does say violent emotions. Sorry, you were telling a funny story
No,
about
it's fine.
suppositories,
Yeah.
but I was still thinking about
About the thing that I
plot
said
of
earlier. You think a lot more about what I said
Kirk
than I do.
says violent emotions, right? And we
Yes.
see Spock and Layla kissing and saying love and stuff. So, like, we could expound that, like, love and good, positive, quote unquote, emotions, including sex, would be okay. It's just the, like, anger, fear, sadness, the, like, stereotypical, quote, bad emotions, violent emotions are the ones. Because hers is broken by sadness. And then Kirk and everybody else's is, like, anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do seem happy and they like, so I guess happiness doesn't count as a violent emotion.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking about
No,
the
it's fine.
actual
It
problem
is-
more.
Yeah, it's where you parse what is a violent emotion or an emotion big enough, definitely. We see Spock wearing a green jumpsuit that he changed into super quick in this.
It must have been in the hollow of the tree. There's no other
Yeah,
explanation.
headcanon, she knows she's taking him
Very
to
true.
go
Yes.
out there
Very
to
true.
join the collective, and in the collective we wear these little jumpsuits. And that's
what
how
I
you can
assumed.
tell.
That's why I was like, it's in the hollow of the tree. She knew they were going to
It's
be
probably a fun thing where he like threw his clothes into the woods and was like, I don't need this uniform anymore.
We're also going to see Spock wearing a green jumpsuit again next time
Oh,
in
in
Spock's
Spock's
brain,
brain.
which is another episode where Spock is acting wildly out of
Yes.
character. So
Yeah,
that's
he
the
doesn't have a
connection.
brain. Can't act in character if you don't got a brain.
Spoiler alert.
there. Well,
And then another note that connects to wider Trek. You know, we see, you talked about it, we see that shot of the empty bridge that swept across before Kirk enters on it, of the empty ship. That's actually what they use to recreate the bridge in the TNG episode Relics, which is Sad Scotty in the future. So it's,
Where everybody's fucking mean to him.
yeah, for no fucking, except,
Fuck everybody on that crew, truly. Especially Geordi.
but not Data, because Data gives him green alcohol.
Yeah, but I don't want to give Data any credit.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
he's the checkoff of that one. You're like, well, begrudgingly, I must admit you worked in
Whatever,
this plot. Whatever.
Data.
We'll jump to some casting notes. Again, the fights in this are dope. So that's Bobby Bass, who is a stunt performer. And actually, during the fight where we see two other officers fighting and he breaks them up, he's in a bunch of Star Trek. That's the only line he gets in the whole series. So that's fun. And then Chuck O'Brien as William Shatner stunt double, fucking throwing himself into those walls. So fucking good. Also notable as a crew member and as the crew is Grant Woods as Kelowitz. We've talked about him in the past. His other episodes are Arena and Galileo 7. So like all hits, no misses. That is Frank Overton as Elias Sandoval, New York born, most known as Sherrick Heck Tate in the 62 To Kill a Mockingbird, Failsafe, The Last Mile, 2 classic Twilight Zone episodes, reruns of The Virginian and Bonanza, and 61 episodes of 12 O'Clock High as Major Stovall. Shortly after this episode, he dies of a heart attack,
Oh,
age 49.
holy shit.
Like, very, very shortly after.
Oh my God. That's the 60s, man. I have a couple of uncles that happened to. It was just like, well, all right. Well, okay. That's not great. Maybe don't drink so much liquor and live in lead houses, I
And
guess.
yeah, who knows? Who knows the pollutants back then?
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly.
And that brings us to Jill Ireland as Layla. Born in 36, started as a dancer. Oh, born in London in 36, started as a dancer in her early teens. And then movies and TV American work. At a one-man show in Orlando, Leonard Nimoy tells the story about how hard it was working on love scenes with her because her boyfriend at the time, well, she was in the process of getting a divorce from her first husband, and her boyfriend at the time was Charles Bronson, and he was on set watching them have love scenes. So Nimoy was like a little hesitant to like really, really go for it with motherfucking Charles Bronson breathing down his throat.
So weird. The 60s were weird.
And then they end up getting married. Her and Bronson end up getting married and kind of intertwined their careers. They did like 14 movies together over 17 years. They became a Hollywood it couple, and both of them became big stars over the course of their relationship. And also, like, during that time, there's only one TV episode and one TV movie where she did that Charles Bronson was not in with her.
Wild.
They were together till the end of her life. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in her right breast in 1984, and then became an activist and spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. Also wrote 2 books about her experience. Sadly, yes, that cancer does come back later and ends up doing what cancer does. Fuck cancer. Moving on to Field Trip, The X-Files. Original air date, May 9th, 1999. We're now at the point in this series where I remember watching some of these episodes live. I watched this on TV. It's a weird feeling. Story by Frank Spotnitz, teleplay by John Shivan and Vince Gilligan, directed by Kim Manners, as we talked about previously.
Yes, thank you.
Erin wasn't kidding. The production section of the Wikipedia article specifically on this episode is much more fleshed out than normal. So we'll talk about the visual effects for a little bit. That's John Vulich, who was the visual lead on this. A lot of talk about the stalactites and stalagmites in the cave, the mushrooms.
The little squigglies.
I noticed how like well lit those like blue backed ones were too. It was clearly like a definitive decision to use that.
And them making the choice to make them clearly terrestrial, clearly earthen, and not alien at all, kind of giving the audience no question whatsoever that what they think is happening is actually happening. And they built all of those off-site and then transferred them to the Fox studios. The opening to that cave was filmed at Bronson Canyon, which is most notable for being the location of Bruce Wayne's Batcave in the original 60s Batman series. Bill Miller was the special effects artist that was in charge of doing those melting animations. It also looks very similar to like the 90s Gushers commercials.
Yes, it
It's
does.
like the same
Oh yeah,
special
it
effect.
does. It does look like a Gusher commercial. That's so funny.
But that's very much of the time as well. And there are a lot of quotes of him of like having to melt Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny without having them look gross or older. He specifically says, I tried to do it without making Gillian Anderson look like Margaret Thatcher, which is
Hilarious. Oh my god.
She plays her
Yeah.
later.
Yes.
And then not trying to not make David Duchovny look into John Hurt as the Elephant Man. That goo is made of food thickener. Is what the substance is called. And then food thickener, and then
It took you a moment, didn't
Yeah.
it?
food thickener, and then a bunch of food coloring. I'm sure the food
Yeah.
thickener makes it ingestible,
Yeah.
and safe. And then also for those larger scenes and the buried scenes, not only are they covered in goo and wearing their full clothes, but underneath that, they're both wearing wetsuits.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Specifically to be buried underground a couple of times because there's multiple shots of them getting pulled out of the ground. A quote from Gillian Anderson, "Oh my God, that was so sick. I remember being covered in yellow goop and then being pulled through the earth and then being covered in a layer of dirt on top of that. It was kind of fun and just completely disgusting at the same time."
Yeah, I bet.
Kind of scary too.
Yeah.
Lore fan stuff. It's kind of mentioned in this episode, but it is a real thing. I'm gonna murder this name. Sorry for all the botanists out there, but Amaryllia astoye is the largest living organism on the planet, estimated at a weight of over 10,000 tons and at least 2,400 years old, 2,384 acres total. It is just a gigantic mycelial network that is existing in the Blue Mountains of northeastern Oregon. That, of course, was discovered in 1998, which means it was probably the direct
I was going to
inspiration
say the
for this
brown
episode.
lights, yeah.
They did DNA testing on it to make sure that it is indeed one large, single, massive fungal organism, and it is. It's really interesting. There's a bunch of shows, documentaries on the mycelial network. One of the most known ones is Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. They will all convince you to do psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah, well, they're right.
Any huge
Yeah, I was
talk
gonna
about,
say, I don't know anyone in this room needs encouragement to do that, but okay.
any huge talk about mycelial networks and all of that stuff, you know, it leans into that kind of group consciousness and that sort of sense of oneness. So be prepared if you look into it. But definitely watch some of those movies. It's really cool and a real thing that this episode was based off of. Moving on to some casting stuff, the gray that we see in Mulder's surprise bedroom that he has.
For real.
That is the son of the stunt coordinator, Danny Wazelis. His 7-year-old son, Cody Wazelis, is in the gray costume. I love that. I think that's great. It's just like, have my fucking kid do it.
Yeah.
That is Robin Lively as Angela Schiff. She's Louise from Teen Witch. She was Jessica in Karate Kid Part 3, Lana from Twin Peaks, and most recently returning character Marlene Harris on 911 Lone Star. Also Nurse Faber on Doogie Howser, Lane McKenzie for 30-something episodes of Savannah, Casey on George and Leo, and guest appearances everywhere. She's had a great TV career. She comes from a family of casting directors and also has a bunch of siblings working in the industry, including, of course, by last name, Blake Lively is her half-sister.
Oh.
That's David Denman as Wallace Shift. He's that guy from The Office, and Frank Sheehan from Mayor of Easttown, Brightburn, the Keanu Reeves Replacement remake, return runs on Outcast, Parenthood, and was Skip on Angel. SoCalborn has a BFA in drama from fucking Juilliard.
Hell yeah.
Was immediately cast after graduating in his first TV guest role, which was an episode of ER. He does a lot of stage theater on the side as well and is said to be a Shakespeare head.
Hell yeah.
And then that brings us to the only other huge guest star here, which is Jim Beaver as the coroner.
What episode? What franchise is he famous for?
Well, we'll get into it. He's actually Whitney Ellsworth on Deadwood, which a lot of people care about.
Yeah, that's how I know him.
Most recently, he's Robert on The Boys, and then, of course, he's Bobby on 69
Bobby Singer
episodes
on The
of
Boys.
Supernatural.
Nice.
He is a really interesting
He's
dude.
the best.
He started in theater after returning from a tour as a radio man in Nam. Got his
That
degree.
rules, actually.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thing to have done as a background.
Got his degree from University of Central Oklahoma after going to a couple of like religious central colleges. And then did 5 seasons for the Dallas Shakespeare Festival while he was there as well. Moved to New York and actually got his start as a writer of plays and TV, including episodes of Hitchcock Presents. On screen, he started with small roles all the way back in 1977 and then started doing TV work in the late 80s where he's gotten such steady work. Main character roles on everything, including soap operas, Young and the Restless. He's got an insane amount of range. In 2008, he was a huge part in preparing and writing the definitive biography of George Reeves. And he served as historical consultant on the film about Reeves' life, Hollywoodland in 26. Also, random note about him, this was in his IMDb. As of 7/7/2007, he's the 7th most prolific writer of IMDb plot summaries and 7th most prolific writer of IMDb mini biographies.
Everyone needs a hobby.
So on top of his like legitimate Hollywood and stage writing credits, he also just does a bunch of work for Internet Movie Database.
Hey.
So fucking cool.
It's an interesting way to like keep yourself sharp too. It's like you know this thing or you watch this thing and you're like, hell yeah, I can just like bust this out. It's like drawing every day. Like
Also,
if you just
writing
do
summaries
something.
is hard. So
And then the last note is another notable role of his is he also played Daniel Leonard, named after Leonard Nimoy, on Broken Arrow Part 1, Season 1, Episode 1 of Star Trek Enterprise.
Woo!
Bobby has faith of the heart.
Also, he's great in Supernatural. Everyone should watch Supernatural just for him.
Just for him. That's
Just
it.
for him.
Just
No other reason.
watch his episodes and then don't watch any more of the show.
Well, you can watch all the Mitch Pileggi ones too.
Fair.
Maybe everyone with Jensen Ackles too.
All of them? Fuck you. Fuck you.
What is the most logical explanation?
I'd say we're looking at a murder. One with ritualistic overtones.
Now it's time for our overall thoughts. I feel like we've talked pretty extensively throughout this episode about how each of them are tied to the theme, but how they tie together specifically.
Yeah, like there are so many
Kismet.
ways. Yeah, there's very kismet on this. There's so many ways that they tied together. Like it could have been false paradise. It could have been I was drugged. Obviously,
Mycelial networks.
yeah, like OTPs. Like both of them could have worked for that too. Like yeah, these crossover so surprisingly well.
So now it's our first time doing our superfan questionnaire. As a superfan, would this episode be on your must-watch list?
100%, absolutely, absolutely. Why would it not be? For you?
I don't know. I really like this episode, but I do think that it is appropriately placed. So I would say maybe yes if it's just for me, or I don't know. I don't think it would be on a must-watch list. I think it's an episode I really like, and if it came up, I would be like, yeah, I like this episode, but I don't feel the pull for it to be a go-to episode.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there a series-defining moment in this episode?
I feel like the whole episode is a series-defining moment. Like, there's so much of it, especially Kirk's connection to the ship. Like, that is his whole fucking deal. And, like, this episode feels like it ties so strongly into that. And also into, like, the relationship between the triumvirate. Like, this feels very defining of that connection that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say both of them, like, realizing, oh, the thing that annoys me the most is the thing that I like the most about this person seems very important. Does this affirm your OTP?
Well, I think up top, since it's the season 4 opener, we should establish what our OTPs are,
Okay.
and then we can go later. Does it affirm or pull away from it?
Yeah.
So, would you like to state your OTP? I'm gonna put you on
For
the
the
spot.
X-Files?
No. Well, yes, for both.
For both.
For both, yes.
Okay, my OTP, my true, genuine Stella's OTP is the triumvirate. It's all three of them. I will take, and I think that counts of, like, I will take them in any order. Like, they can all, whatever, it doesn't matter. They can be all together. It can be just two of them, whatever. But as long as they're involved, that's the OTP.
Okay.
Ideally, baby has to be involved, but I will fuck with some spoons too. For the X-Files, I mean, like, I get that this is about Mulder and Scully. I genuinely do get that. So I accept that, and I like it. I do genuinely like it, especially near the end, like when we talked about in the robots episode. Like, I love that episode specifically because I like their comforting, like, old, like, relationship. But I am also gross shipper trash, and I just want Skinner to be there. So
That's your triumvirate for the X-Files.
I like the triumvirates.
Yes.
Period.
I mean, that makes sense. Mine are basically the same. Like, the triumvirate is my go-to. Obviously, I've got my rare pairs, and I feel like that's going to be the thing that really pulls at this over the course of this season. And obviously, it's Mulder and Scully. Like, the part of what is happening with this X-Trex project is that I'm also getting these, like, kind of sporadic almost moments of them together where it's like, oh, that's right. I fucking love this. I love this part. Like, Mulder moodily fingering the cross during the vampire episode. Like, those are the things that, like, they pop out of nowhere, and I'm like, fuck, that's right. I love these two together.
Well, yeah, so for the Star Trek episode, this obviously affirms my OTP.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely agree.
Just in that all three of them just, like, know each other so well. And then, I mean, yeah, for the X-Files one, I think it could go just Mulder and Scully, or if you want to be shipper trash like me, you could even throw Skinner in there. He's the one that helped. Their delusion of him also helps break their own delusion, and he's the one that fucking saves their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Which is his job.
Absolutely.
Is to save their life.
Well, I feel like our OTPs overlap there, too.
Yeah.
Like, when Mulder and Scully are really affirming of their relationship together, and then Walter is, like, always fucking there. Like, that works for yours, too.
Yeah. Is this episode a fuck, fine, or a flop?
It's a fuck.
Yeah, they're
Let's
both
get
fucks.
the fuck out of here. They're both
very
fucks.
good.
So good. All right. You can find us on the internet. Follow us at NYD Productions on Instagram and interact with the show using the hashtag XTrexPod. You can find me at NYD Urgency on Instagram.
You can find me on Blue Sky and Tumblr and Instagram at Stella Cheeks.
You can find me on Instagram at FisterRoboto83. That's about it. And you can also subscribe to our new monthly newsletter at nydproductions.substack.com for updates on things like what we've been listening to, playing, reading, or screaming at the sky.
You can also email us at xtrexpod@gmail.com with questions or comments. And oh wow, do I have sex pollen fix. I literally, in my spreadsheet, have a separate part for sex pollen specific fix. And again, one of my go-to comfort/horny reads is a sex pollen one, and it's Spock and Kirk, and it's so good. And please, I'm just going to put it in the Discord. When this episode comes out, everybody has to read it. It's short. It's so good. You should read it.
Fine, whatever.
It's short.
How short?
10,000 words. That is nothing. You could read it in 20 minutes.
Fine, whatever.
It's really good.
Truthfully, you have been good about, you don't send me that much fanfic, and when you do, it's very specialized. You're like, you will like this. It's like when they chained Walter to the bed and made him wear a Santa hat.
That one's excellent. Also, did I ever send you the one where Mulder and I think we talked about it for the memory loss episode, but the one where Mulder and Skinner lose their memories and then they fuck and then they wake up the next day and Walter's like, I can't believe you made me fuck you. Anyways, I'll be sending you both of those fics.
Okay, great. I look forward to it. Oh my God.
And if you want more special behind-the-scenes action, like those fics dropped served right to you in a Discord channel, script notes, outtakes, extra podcasts, and outtakes from our released podcasts, access to that said Discord, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/nwittyproductions, where you can get all of that and more for only $1 or more.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and to tell your friends. We find that this nerdy shit is better when it's shared.
We'll see you next episode for the Civil War.
Fucking hell.
AKA Erin finally gets to see Space Lincoln.
Finally.
In the meantime,
Believe boldly.
Seek truth.
ship proudly.
X-Trex is created and written by Stella Cheeks, Erin Cline, and Bobby Hoffman, and produced by Bobby Hoffman for NYD Productions. Our show theme is Alien Spy by Ionix, and our show art was made by Jonathan Curtis.